for joining us tonight. Welcome to Baggage Claim, our Baggage Claim series. This is episode number 3. So if you're new to this show, thank you so much for joining on tonight. If you have been viewing, thank you for coming back. This night is an opportunity that is set aside for you to gain some information. Our series is on racial trauma and how it connects to our mental health. And so we know that as we travel through life, there are many things that can weigh us down and can feel like 1,000 pounds. These nights are set aside to give you an opportunity to unpack your bags with Dr. Danita. And so tonight I am excited and thrilled to have my children on. I'm going to introduce them, but just a few things that I want to share with you before the introductions and before we get into our topic for tonight. These particular lives are meant to provide information, education. They are in no way meant to be a substitute for professional counseling. Although I will provide tips and things that you can do to help improve your mental health, just know that seeing a professional is most advantageous for you if you find that you are struggling emotionally. And so tonight we are talking about racial identity. We're going to share our story on tonight. Definitely like and share. Just take a minute to share with all of your friends, share with your white friends, share with your black friends. This is an opportunity for us to get the information out. There is so much that we, even as black people, are not aware of, and especially our white friends. There are conversations that are just not being had. And so we definitely want everyone to be able to take part in this and gain this information. So tonight I have my children, and I thought they were going to sit in age order, but so I am introducing Kevin, who is in the middle. Kevin is my firstborn, and Keron is my secondborn. And Kierra is baby girl. Anytime I talk about baby girl, she's really not a baby anymore, but she will always be baby girl to us. And so thank you so much for joining us on tonight, or joining me, joining our live audience. And we're going to talk about our story. And so when I think about our story, for me personally, I struggled with racial identity growing up in an all-white neighborhood, just trying to figure out where I would fit in. And when we talk about racial identity, to have a positive racial identity, you have to know where you fit. You have to value yourself. You have to know who you are, and just have positive thoughts about you and who you are and what you can do. And so I struggled a little bit when I was growing up, because when my mother would take us to church, we went to an all-black neighborhood, an all-black church. But then when I came home throughout the week, my week was with all white people. And so just trying to figure out exactly where I fit as it related to who I was during the week, and then who I was when I got to church on Sundays, it was a struggle for me. And so as a team in our counseling center, we are considering embarking upon what we call racial healing, and there is a book called the Racial Healing Workbook. And one of the first activities in the Racial Healing Workbook is to take yourself back and to think about your first experience that you had with race or racism. And so I'm going to ask you, whoever wants to chime in first, what was your first experience with race or racism?
I guess we'll start down the line.
Yeah.
Mine was definitely, I will leave her whole name out of it, but her name was Casey, in 6th grade, on my very first day of school here. Or excuse me, I think it was 5th grade was my very first day of school here. And yeah, do you want me to tell the story? Okay. So that story, yeah, so the moment I sat down after moving here in class, was the first day of school, the first thing that she said to me, we were sitting in desks of 4, so that we could face each other and get to know each other. And her method of getting to know me was, before she knew my name, she said, "Don't think that you're gonna come to our school and start trouble, because I know all the teachers in the Board of Education, and so do my parents, and I'll get you kicked out of here so fast." I didn't know this girl. She had never met me. This was her first interaction with me, and my first interaction with my new school, moving into this area. And at the time, I didn't really directly connect it with racism. I just thought that, because I immediately jumped on her. I made a joke back with her. I won't tell you what I said, but I made a joke back with her because I thought, like, where I come from, when somebody comes at you like that on the first day of school, that's a roasting session. We're about to start bombing on each other. And that's what I thought it was, but this was really racism. I was like, oh. I had to connect the pieces later after I came home. Like, wait, is this where we are? Are we being racist? But that was my first of many stories. So that's that part.
Okay, so I guess I'll go next. My story dates further back than 6th grade. It actually was about 6 years old, and I was at the bus stop, and I don't remember this girl's name, I just remember her face, and she said to me that her mom said that she cannot play with me anymore because my skin was dirty. And I remember it like it was yesterday, and I remember thinking, like, no, my parents wash me all the time, so how can my skin be dirty? And at 6 years old, I didn't know that that was racism, but when I rehearsed the story later on, as I got older, I realized, oh, she's literally talking about the color of my skin being dirty. And yeah, that was the first of many, 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 many more.
And my first experience was in 6th grade. I'm also gonna leave her whole name out, but Jamie, who I thought was my friend, we were sitting in class, and just randomly she asked me if my father was a drug dealer. And I didn't honestly know what a drug dealer really was at 10. And so in the moment, I didn't think it was racism, but there was like a part of me that was like, something about this doesn't feel right. Like something about this feels personal.
Like there's a deeper joke to this.
Yeah, there's something deeper behind this, because why are you randomly asking me if my dad is a drug dealer? It's a very random question.
Like you guys
like,
discussed this at home.
Yeah, like you heard this from somewhere, because why would that be the first thing to come out of a 10-year-old's mouth?
Right.
But yeah, that was my first experience.
Yeah, just to add context to this, so Kierra is saying, like, I thought she was my friend. Well, Kierra was born, we moved to the neighborhood when Kierra was 3. So she spent her entire education journey in this particular neighborhood that we live in. But Kevin and Keron, we brought him to where we lived when he was in the 9th grade, and
it was too late.
And it was fairly late, and Keron was going into the 6th grade. So Kierra only had these friends. These were the only kids that she knew. And so she gets all the way to the 6th grade after being from 1st to 6th grade. This girl is supposed to be my friend. And so that's just to add a little context. I remember my first experience goes back to, I think I was about 12. My dad had us on a bowling league, and I don't even remember who I was, but I was walking to the bowling alley. And just to add context to this, I grew up in the projects in public housing in Brooklyn. The project itself initially was all white, and they were like putting one black family to a building. And as I got older and I look back, I didn't know then, but as I look back, I realized that white people that were in the project in this public housing used it as a stepping stone to get their homes. We, however, did not have that kind of education or opportunity, and so we used the project as our resting place. And so as the project began to become more and more black, white people would move out. And then more black people moved in and white people moved out. But on the outskirts of the project was this Italian neighborhood. And so you always had to go through the Italian neighborhood to get to anything, to get to the grocery store, to get to the train station, wherever you were going. So I was walking to the bowling alley, and this car stopped, and they began to throw their trash out at me, and they were throwing bottles, and they called me the N-word and told me to go back to Harlem. And I was thinking, I've never even been to Harlem. What is that? My mother didn't take us many places. I mean, she was in survival mode, just trying to make sure that we went to church and we came home and we went to school. That was it. And so I was like, Harlem? Like, what's in Harlem? Why are they telling me to go back to Harlem? And so that was my first experience of many. I was speaking to my sister today and just talking to her about what the show was going to be about. And I was asking her, and she said that what she remembered was when she was in middle school, the Park Boys, that was an Italian gang that was in our area outside of the projects. Well, we took public transportation to school. And so she vividly remembers that there was never really a time when those few black people that were in the school felt safe once they had to leave the school grounds to go home. And she recalled this one time where she and her friends had to run down the train tracks. They were being chased on the train tracks to get to the next stop. It wasn't that many stops between the school and our home, but they literally got chased down the train tracks. Now, what kind of trauma, we talked about trauma last week, right? What kind of traumatic imprint would that leave on your emotions to have that kind of experience and then to know that you have to go back and do it again the next day? Yeah. And so what else could you all share? You can fast forward to today, because this goes on. This is an everyday experience, especially living in Columbus and in this area.
Right. Yeah, so to give context to us growing up out here, when I first got here, I do think that I was, and there might have been a few more, but I vividly remember there being 3 to 4 black men or boys at the time in my school. So that's the context that I'm giving. You're talking about 3 to 4 black kids or black boys in the school that I have.
Right, there were 11 in your graduating class. When I talked to when I talked to your counselor, she says, I really want to help. There are 11 black boys in the graduating class. What can I do to help?
That's crazy. So obviously, there was racism. So one thing that I think that we talked about after having gotten through the whole experience, because when you're in it, for one, I was an adolescent, so my brain wasn't even fully developed. And then I also, you're in it, so you don't know what's going on. But looking back on it, the one thing that I was surprised, or the one thing that I would have been ahead of, is the fact that I didn't realize that a lot of the adults in the school were racist. You're dealing with racist kids, but when you put the pieces together, the adults have to be racist if the kids are racist, because they're, it's the area and that's where they're getting it from. They're products of the adults that are around. But when you're a child, you don't really realize that the adults, may not have your best interest in your hand. A 12-year-old, a 13-year-old is unable to process that my teacher doesn't have my best interest in hand. And I'm not saying that was everybody, but undoubtedly we're going to keep it real. There was some that were just racist. They weren't ready for this influx of culture into their school, nor did they want it. They liked their life the way it was. We came in and changed things, and that created a kickback of racism and prejudice, and on it went from there. So that was that throughout high school, throughout early elementary school, late elementary school, and high school, middle school. How about y'all?
I had a different perspective coming in because I was older. I knew coming in as we drove down the Route 68 and all I could see was cornfields and cows that I was going to experience some stuff. And And I remember maybe the first or second day of school, I saw seniors who would drive to school and they had these pickup trucks with the Confederate flags, and I was like, oh yeah, this is not our spot. I don't know what my parents are thinking, but I remember vividly saying, the second I get out of high school, I'm going to New York. I'm going somewhere. I'm going to a city. I'm going to an area that's going to accept me and my culture, and I'm just out. And I did exactly that. And the whole time I was in high school, I really was just focused on getting out. And when I experienced racism, it wasn't a huge shock, but it was just like confirmation. It pushed me to want to be out. So I literally was out at 18, and I went to a city where I knew it wasn't going to be an issue to be black. Although I did experience racism in New York too, but not to this degree. But yeah, I mean, the first time I even got called the N-word with the ER at the end of it was at this school, and I'm like, wow, they really do this. They really call you that. They really mean it, and you have to actually fight, in order to just keep your head above water. And one thing I do remember is that we had a guidance counselor that was like essential to the 15 black people that were in my entire school, and her name was Mrs. Dunham, and she was like our liaison.
Shout out to Dunham for anybody.
Yeah, shout out to Dunham. I wish you were watching, but you helped us get through. You know what I mean by us. You helped. She really inserted herself when she needed to. She stood up for us, and if it wasn't for her, a lot of us would have been at a greater disadvantage, without her. So that was my high school experience. It wasn't the best, but I learned a lot while I was there. So.
I was gonna say, kind of piggyback off of what Keron said. I think my experience was a lot less abrasive and a lot more like just systematic in general. Just not having, first of all, not having a black teacher ever until I got to college. Not having anyone that looks like you to represent you or, anything like that. And then just being,
norm.
yeah, and then just being treated very differently because you are different compared to, what the majority is. So yeah, that definitely impacted my identity growing up.
Yeah. So I was thinking about what Kevin said about Ms. Dunham being, there to like be your protector and be the one who would speak for you and the one that you could look up to. I became that. The same school that my sister went to, where they were chased by the park boys. Years later, that was my first teaching assignment, and I taught at that school. And we're talking in the 80s. There had already been black kids in the school for many years. When I got there, it's a staff of about 150. There was one black cooking teacher and one black sewing teacher. And they were both in their 60s. And then I entered as a black teacher teaching in academics, and I was young. I was in my 20s, and all 147 others were white teachers. So the black children in that school hung on to me like for life. Literally for life. And the experience was just one that I will never forget, and a lot of those children still contact me today because they had no one to look up to. But fast forward, even when I came to New Jersey in the late 90s, right before Kierra was born, my interview with the superintendent of the school said, well, we haven't had any people of color. You would be the first in this school. And then he said, well, in all honesty, we haven't had a need. And I was blown away. He says, we haven't had a need. And so what he was saying is, we're just getting black people in the
Right.
school now, so now we need you.
Right.
We need one of you. And just the idea and the thought of being in the 90s and hearing someone said, we haven't had a need.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Crazy.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Dad and I thought that we had kind of, like our parents thought they paid the price and that we wouldn't have to experience it, that we thought we paid the price, and now we are here 30 some odd years later having the same conversations that we had when we were children.
Right.
And so I was doing an interview with a woman, and she says, well, the good thing is, where we live. And as soon as she said that, where we live, I thought, this is going to be from your perspective where we live, because where we live is not going to be the same perspective if you ask my black children and my black husband, what their experience is. And we were talking about, all of the murders and things like that. And she says, yeah, well, the good thing is where we live, we don't really experience like that. And I said, well, no, I think maybe you need to have a conversation with my sons and my husband, and they can share with you whether the perspective is the same about where we live. So tell us a little bit about where we live
Right.
and in terms of what that is for a black man.
Well, you lived here longer than me.
I
was
did.
out in 3 years.
Yeah. So, first and foremost, that mentality still breeds the fact that you can get these people that say racism doesn't exist because they grow up in a place and their own perspective where they feel like racism doesn't exist because they don't see it every day. But obviously, they're not having conversations with people like us every day. But anyway, to get to the point, being an adult and a black male in this town, I can count countless times that I've been pulled over for absolutely no reason. My friends can attest, they've been with me, they've been on their own and been pulled over in this town for, or this area I should say, for countless reasons that turn into, where are you going? Where are you coming from? How do you know the passenger? How long have you got, where's your house? Oh, is that, everything is investigatory. So from the time we even start the stop. And I do recall one time, this is to speak to the perspective, I recall having a white friend in the car with me, and the cop stopped us for some reason, I don't know, a minor reason, I don't know, a traffic light or whatever. I'd done something wrong, but nothing major. And the guy's like, where you guys come from? Where are you guys going? I think we were going to play basketball. And then he's like, oh, how do you know him? I'm like, we're going to play basketball. Like, he's my friend. He's like, oh, okay. I don't see any basketball in the car. And I'm like, they have basketballs there where I'm going. And so he's like, all right. And then he finally lets us go. And the guy in the car with me is like, wow, like, I can't believe he talked to you like that. How did he's asking all these questions? Like, what was that about? I'm like, I actually thought that was rather light. Like, he let us go.
The guy in the car was white.
The guy in the car was white, and he's like, I can't believe he talked to you like that. And I'm like, I thought that was rather light. Like, I didn't have to get out of the car. You know what I'm saying? He didn't call back up. He didn't call for another car. Like, he didn't, you know what I'm saying, try to ask me he didn't ask if I had drugs in the car, or if I had any warrants or felonies or anything. He didn't ask any of that. So I thought that was cool. I'm not, but just listen to me saying, even by mistake, I thought that was cool. None of it is cool. It's already racist at that point.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that's an everyday thing. I don't even know how many times that I've been pulled over and that hasn't happened. And I don't know if that's across the board, but I have a first-hand experience of being in the car with a white person who's my friend. He's like, they never talk to me like that.
Yeah.
So I can't give you the perspective of everybody else, but I know mine. And every time I get a cop car in my rearview mirror, I'm nervous. And then I was even thinking about it to how far it goes back being groomed. Because I remember being little, and it's always just been natural for me. Like, even as a kid, when I'm in the car with my father and the cop passes us, and I see him look back, and I look back at 6. And I don't even know why we're looking back. We're just looking back because you look back at cops when they pass you. And I've been groomed that way since I could tell what he was doing. Since I was big enough to know what he's doing. He's looking at a cop, I'm looking at the cop, and I'm grown that way. Now through life, I've never not looked back when a cop passes me. I don't have to be doing anything. But I'm never not looking back when the cop passes me.
last week we identified that and we defined it as the intergenerational transmission.
Right.
No words had to be passed between you and Dad, but the whole idea of you seeing his body language,
Right.
probably some level of anxiety and some level of, you know, that it automatically sent you a message.
Exactly.
Yeah,
100%.
I don't remember the term you just used.
Intergenerational
Right.
transmission.
Intergenerational transmission. Yeah, I'm gonna touch on that because just today, I was taking my children out shopping, and I had on this shirt, which I got for Father's Day, and it just so happened. I didn't wear it for this show specifically. I actually like the shirt and I wear it. But anyway, it says proud black father. And so my daughter, she's 7, she read it, and I also had on a hat at the time, and the hat had a picture of the continent Africa. And so my daughter, she reads the shirt and she asked me what's on the hat. And I told her that that's Africa, that's where we're all from. And she's like, And then she reads the shirt, she's like, proud black father. And she goes, I don't think I want you to wear that. And I said, why? And she makes this face like, and she puts her hands to her mouth like she's nervous. And I said, why do you want me to wear this? You think that I'm gonna get in trouble or someone's gonna harm me? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, now we've never had the conversation that would lead her to believe that I would be harmed by wearing this. But it doesn't take much for her to pay attention to my reactions when I'm looking at our president say something crazy, or when I'm having conversations with other people about race, even though I haven't directly had the conversation with her, although now I'm going to have to, she's picking it up, and she's only 7. So she's already understanding that there's an issue being in this skin color and then trying to represent it and be proud about it. So I let her know at the moment that there's nothing that's going to change this skin, and there's nothing that's going to change me being proud about it. So I'm going to wear it no matter what attention it's going to bring me. And she's, like, okay. But I'm now going to have the conversation with her about, who she is and what it means to be in this skin color and the opposition you're going to have to face and how much harder you have to work, to be on, or try to be on a level playing field with the fairer skin. And that's just the reality, It's just the reality of what it is.
Annoying combo.
Yeah.
Tiring combo.
Yeah, it's one you want to avoid. She's 7. I don't feel like having the conversation,
Right.
but now that I know she has this underlying thought, now's the time to swoop in and be like, nope, you got to be proud of this, and you are gonna rock it and wear it and love it and hold your head up high and black girl magic and all of that, So that's what it is.
Yeah.
Here.
So.
Oh, this is Black Boys. I forgot.
Yeah. But this is
we can
the
roll on.
Yeah. I know that you can go on. We have enough. I know, based on what you have shared with me, you, Kevin, being in New York, and Keron, the countless times, I know that we can do the whole show. Just
That's a whole other
sharing
segment.
experiences. And then if we add Dad's experiences in there with it, we can do 2 shows.
Right.
And so that's just our unfortunate reality. But when you think about all of the experiences, how much of racism do you feel like you have internalized? And when I say that, I mean things that are said about us, or things that that white people would not want us to believe. How much do you feel that you could have possibly internalized?
Who's starting?
I guess I will. You subconsciously internalize a lot of it because it's almost like a brainwashing, but I'll just take it from the perspective of being a business owner. Being a black business owner, you always, or I should say my business partner and I always look to hire black first. Right?
What's the name of your business?
Kinky Customs plug.
Shout out.
Yes, check us out on Facebook. We do amazing work. But anyway, as a black business owner, we are always looking to hire black first. I mean, we're looking to hire qualified, but we're looking to hire black first. But I tell you, the second a black person messes up, then me and my partner like, see, that's why we can't go with the black people. But we gotta go ahead and get the white people. And and it's like you instantly fall into this thing like, no, they're just people. White people mess up, black people mess up, yellow people mess up. But when black people mess up, it's like the end of the world, and this is why we don't use black people, and this is why we shoot ourselves in the foot, and this is why we can't hire the black person, this is why we gotta go and get the white person. And that's just not a true narrative. It's just a person that messed up. It's just another person. It doesn't have anything to do with the fact they're black, but because we only see black people messing up on TV, then we automatically go in like it's the worst thing in the world. You know what I mean? And we're much harder on them, on ourselves, than we are on other races. We will let other races slide before we let ourselves slide.
Right.
I'm gonna let you go in a second, Kierra, but I just want to piggyback off that. That's internalized by, it starts at slavery because you don't want to be next to anybody that's messing up because you're gonna cause attention from the white man. I don't mess up like that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's it. That's him. Like,
Yeah.
we good, right? Like,
Right.
and that's why we are so quick to get away from another black person that makes a mistake or that
Right.
no, I can't have him on my team because he's gonna
He's
back in
gonna
the
make
day he's
us
gonna get me
look bad.
killed.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But now it's like he's gonna make us look bad in front of the white man. I don't want to look like that. So oh gosh, we gotta go get somebody else. You know what I'm saying? That's straight from slavery. Like that's an internalized racism from slavery. But go ahead, Kierra.
I was gonna say that one thing that's been very difficult to not internalize is the angry black woman narrative. Especially growing up in the area that I grew up in. I mean, black people in general, but I'm obviously a black woman and I was a black girl then. So having any type of difference of opinion when it came to authority, or having any type of, question or comment that might be opposite of what they're teaching or whatever, just having, and I had a very inquisitive, mind or whatever.
Thompson trait.
Yeah, and that was always taken as you're being disruptive, or you're trying to.
Insubordinate.
Yeah, you're being insubordinate, or you're trying to one up me in my classroom, that type of thing, and just getting that different treatment from another white classmate that might ask the same question, and it might not be with the same mannerism, right? They might not be talking with their hands and things like that, but just not like growing up with authority, not having the cultural confidence to know that I'm not angry, I'm just talking. This is how we talk. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I don't talk quiet. I'm loud. But I'm not being rude in any type of way. But there's this narrative, black woman starts talking with her hands, or she's angry. And that's it. And that's the only thing a black woman could be, is either angry
or not.
Or not.
And to not be angry means to be like,
Yeah.
And another thing that it's almost like a badge of honor when you do make it into the circle. I'm talking about, again, from a business perspective. It's like you feel like you've elevated when you make it into the white circle. It's like now you got a seat at the table. And that to me is also another form of internalized racism, because why are we not just as valuable when we're working for our own people? Or, why are we not as valuable, or why is it not as valuable when we're working for our own people? So when I first started the business, I worked in a certain area that was predominantly black, and worked it hard and did what I had to do. And when I started getting the phone calls for the next neighborhood that was not a black neighborhood, that was predominantly white, I felt my heart fluttering, like, ooh, this is it, like, I'm about to get my break, I'm going into the next level. And I'm looking back and realizing, like, that's really a messed up mentality. Like, why is it, how do you blame yourself? Because now I feel like, I'm about to come into the money area because white people have money. But black people have money too. But it's just like we always feel like white is right and white is better and white has more and white is this and white is that, and I gotta get to the white table because that's where it's at. And And that's internalized racism, period. I mean, it's nothing else to say about it. And you have to be able to check yourself and have that conversation with yourself, like, why is that what you're striving for? Why is that your goal, to get to the white table? And then you'll open up all these conversations.
Yeah, I think for me, when I get into those conversations where my white friends will say, but you're different,
That's a good one.
I begin to really start with this dialogue in my head. Well, are you different? Are you how are you different? Well, I know what they mean. I know that they mean that I'm able to construct my sentences to sound like theirs, which is the standard, and I'm able to write grammatically well, which is their standard. So I know what they mean. I know they mean that my mannerisms aren't as aggressive as what they see, from other people that look like me. I know these things on TV.
Right.
I know what they're saying, but then I'm saying, I don't do those things. So am I different? Am I not? Am I different? Am I not? And so there, again, internalized racism. I'm black. Just because
Period. Yeah.
I have different mannerisms, I'm still black, period. And so it's just interesting. You don't really, after those conversations, you kind of just move on with life. You have your job, you do what you do, and you just keep it moving. And that's one of the dangers, that we just keep it moving. And we don't take a pause enough and more pauses to really think, what am I, who am I, what am I doing here? And once we figure all of that out, how can I make a change? Because change absolutely has to happen.
Right.
But when we're in these spaces where we are what we would call okay, we're not completely down and out.
Right.
Like there is privilege, there's stages of privilege even in our culture, and so when you are more privileged within your culture, people tend to just keep it moving, and then they forget about those who are less privileged within their culture. But for the grace of God, I was there, and so I was able to, do what I needed to do to work to where we are today. But I had different foundation from many people that don't have that opportunity. So I'm just going to keep it moving and not even look back, not even think about those that look like me.
Right.
But a lot of us have been doing that. Yeah. So when you think about being in the spaces that we introduced you to, me and your father, thinking, we thought we were doing what we should have done. But when you think about being in these spaces, what do you feel like you didn't get that you really needed to have in order to function well in your blackness as an adult?
Black teachers. For one. That was a big thing. Like we were talking about, Black History Month is 1 month, and then the curriculum in history class is literally it's we were slaves, we were brought over here from Africa, we were slaves, we were freed. Dr. Martin Luther King got us our right to vote, and here we are today, and racism isn't as what it used to be. That's the whole curriculum, a week. And there was a guy named Malcolm X, and go look him up if you want to. and that's our whole lesson on black people. And that just was what it was. I think another thing that I missed out being a musician is just being able to relate to other musicians like myself. There was one other guy that was a drummer he was a phenomenal drummer, Dave Hardy, shout out to Dave Hardy. Went on to do great things, but we bounced off of each other, but we were the only ones that could bounce off of each other in that school. We didn't have any, and Anthony DiCarlo, of course, my other good friend we had to play with. But as far as levels of music and different genres of music and styles of music, we were the only ones that could bounce off of each other and really share ideas at the same level. And I would go other places and there's a million me's. You know what I'm saying? There's everybody's good and they're striving on their instrument and they're they know multi-genres of music, and I'm not saying that there aren't people of other colors that don't, but let's keep it real, black people are great at music, okay? That's what we do. That's one of the good things that we do. But yeah, so I didn't have a lot of people to relate to as far as music goes, and that is a natural thing that's inside of us is rhythm and music, and I felt like I was taken out of my pond by being around all these people that weren't naturally good at music and naturally good at moving and having rhythm.
So I was asking, what do you feel like you didn't get that you may have needed to have to function in your blackness as an adult?
Well, I was only there 3 years, so prior to that, I had black role models. I had black teachers, Miss Satterwhite, that was like 3rd grade, but I remember her vividly, but I don't think I missed out on a lot coming into that situation or this high school, because I was already on my way out anyway, because I was 14 or 15 when we came here. So I had a good mix. It came to an abrupt halt when we got to where we live in Columbus. It was a very abrupt cultural shock that there weren't more people that looked like me, because the schools that I had come up from before, it was a melting pot, and there were plenty of black people that looked like me, and I was in a band, and we had a strong black band teacher in 6th grade, Mr. Brown, and he was always encouraging us as African American students, as black kids. He was always pushing us and asking us, what our passions were and all of that stuff.
I remember Mr. Brown.
Yeah, Mr. Brown was dope. Yeah, Mr. Brown was it. Miss Satterwhite was it. These were like strong black figures, and fortunately I had that. And then when we got to Columbus, it came to an end, and we had Miss Dunham. And she was the one that we clung to, because that was the only one that we had. But yeah, as far as what I missed is, I guess I missed out on what I had, and coming to terms with the fact that everywhere is not like what I came from was kind of like a wake up moment for me. Like, okay, you're not going to get that, so now you have to look within yourself to make it through, or whatever coping mechanism you're about to come with to get through these next 3 years, you're going to have to do that and get out. And I think that's the drive that I got on, because I didn't have what I came from.
Yeah, before you go, Kierra, it was just interesting. We just wanted what we thought the best. But anyway, I remember the day that you came home, Kevin, and you said, "Mom, what have you, where have you
Where are we?
landed
Where are we?
And you were talking about the conversations that were going on about slaughtering pigs on the back porch.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, OMG, what have I done culturally to my children? But then in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, maybe they can get some cultural awareness of people that are not like us. I don't know.
No.
We got plenty.
Yeah, you're gonna erase the little bit that we have. That's what's gonna happen.
Kierra?
I was gonna say that very opposite of y'all. All I knew was white culture, really. Because like you said, we moved there and I was very young. It was all I knew. And I didn't know it was a problem until I got to college and I started my minor in African American Studies. And I realized that every history class that I ever took was wrong. They were teaching very incorrect history.
Ridiculous stuff.
So, we're talking about the education being better, but then I'm like, okay, but in history I was learning that the Civil War was fought to free the slaves, which it was not. And I was still learning that Christopher Columbus discovered America, which
he did not.
Which he did not. So I think also, for people who might be thinking about moving their kids into an all-white neighborhood, education good education needs to be reevaluated.
And starts at
Right,
home.
yeah.
And it starts at home, but good education needs to be reevaluated. You know, it's
Right.
not just about getting into college, into a good college, or whatever. Like, really, like, is what you're learning or what they're teaching actually valid? Is it true?
Is it true? Yeah.
And is it going to impact these kids in a way that is gonna make them better in society?
Yeah, I do remember that in terms of my education. I had also a struggle in that regard as well, because when I went into the neighborhood where my church friends were, and I would go into McDonald's, they would have pictures of black people, as their decor in McDonald's, and I'm like, I never even heard of these people. And even in we had Basil readers where we were learning. My Basil reader had Sally, Dick, and Jane, and their readers had Pam and Penny. Their Basil readers had black characters, mine had white characters, and just the level of knowledge that they were able to obtain culturally was just so different from what I had experienced. But just staying with that thought, because we posted earlier on the page, we posted a question, and hopefully I can get to the question. You said I can do it?
You can do it.
So the question was, you said I can do it. I can get to the question. The question was, head versus heart dilemma. Is removing children from their cultural group a setup for educational success, but also a setup for personal failure? And so we did get some feedback from that question, and some of the comments. And so Facebook is telling me to look at the most relevant. How does Facebook get to determine what's the most relevant? I want to know what everybody has to say.
Facebook.
And
Okay.
so Jessica said that she had just done some research on this topic, and she said teach them to maintain things in their cultural identity, their hair, their dress, cultural norms. Many black students feel the need to assimilate. That's going to be one of our topics. To assimilate to the mainstream culture of the school to fit in. They might gain popularity, but it teaches them to be chameleons wherever they go, instead of being confident in who they are.
Yeah.
Parents who put their black children in white spaces need to do double the work of speaking their God-given identity over them, because it's so easy for it to be lost in those settings. That is truth right there.
Facts. Who said
And
that,
that's
Jessica?
that was Jessica Richards. That was what we talked about last night. That was the part that me and your father didn't do such a great job. I didn't get it when I was growing up. He was in survival mode in South Carolina, and so yeah, we just did not do the best job as it relates to that. So I think what Jessica shared is spot on. Charlene said there's nothing wrong with wanting better education for your kids. The problem is, why do we have to go outside of our cultural areas to get better education? That's the real problem. So there's nothing wrong with wanting better education for your kids. However, it's important to let them know it's not the group themselves that makes the schooling poor, rather the system. Yes. That are playing, that are in play and that are controlling it. I feel most times the personal failure would stem from the "I'm better than you" or "you're too good for us" mentality. And there's quite a bit of dialogue that went on. Sadara said, I feel somewhere in between. Sadara grew up with you. I definitely was educationally successful, but I had a lot of pent-up frustrations and anger towards white people. I felt like if you were white and looked enacted anything like the white people that I grew up with, you were racist. And that's just unhealthy. Laugh out loud. Yeah. And one more I'll share. Quaitra, she says that as a parent, my children grew up within their cultural norms, and I was that parent who wanted my children to attend a diverse university because their experiences in corporate America, being a minority, would not be the same experience they had within the environment they were accustomed to. There's definitely pros and cons. So that's facts, that there are definitely pros and cons, but if we could say to parents who are in this dilemma, because the reality is that systemically, the school systems in poor neighborhoods, in black neighborhoods, just have not educationally gotten to the place of where education is in white spaces. That is just a fact. And so being able, if that is a choice that parents make, then being able to supplement and make sure that your children know who they are and that their racial identity development is healthy, that's very, very important. And so we're coming close to a close. If you could foresee, or how do you foresee making a mark? Because the most important thing that I want people to get out of these lives is, one, to be able to process where we are individually, but then also, what are we going to do to make a difference? You know, how are we going to make a mark in our community, in our society, to say that this matters to us? We're not going to just say Black Lives Matter and just keep saying it without actually participating in seeing to it that we move forward as a people. And so how do you foresee yourself? My lane is mental health, and I'm going to keep moving forward in that lane. Where do you see yourself in making a mark to make a difference?
I think it's important for Black people to become what they needed. So Black people need to become teachers, they need to become superintendents, they need to be bosses, they need to be people who are in charge to be able to make decisions for the people under them from a Black perspective. So I am also in the mental health field, and I think right now the statistics are something like 4% of psychologists are Black. So just adding to that percentage and making sure that I'm advocating for Black and brown people in my field.
Word.
Business owner. I wasn't gonna go the business route. But I was just thinking that there was a time where the Black men in the community poured into the younger men in the community,
That's
and
good.
that was
Yeah.
Touch on that.
yeah, there was a time that happened, and that was like an honor to do, a privilege and an honor for the older Black men in the community to raise a community of men. And I think we've gotten lost on that, so I think that it's important for that to come back into play. And you don't have to be old, you just be a little more experienced than the next Black young man. But you share your knowledge, you share your experience, you share what worked, what didn't work, if you have a little more experience than the next person. And it's just a matter of sharing the knowledge and purposefully and intentionally uplifting the next, instead of like stepping on each other's neck to get up. So I think that's something I do. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think our generation has gotten away from, I would say gotten away because there are a lot of dope Black fathers out there. Obviously, we have one on set, I have one at home. But systematically, systematically we've gotten the dope black father out of the household on a grand scale. And it is up to us to have the knowledge to stay away from that in order to build strong black families and be able to instill these things, instill your kid's identity in them from an early age. And that starts with being a solid black man, you know, and then you become a solid black husband, and then you become a solid black father. I'm only just a solid black man for right now, but I'm a part of the each one teach one community, you know what I'm saying? So I'm always bouncing ideas off of my bros and my friends that are in the same same walk as me as far as age group and life and work and things of that nature. So each one teach one. You know, if you'll make a better community around you, which makes a better surrounding community, neighboring community, when you build off of each other daily, and that starts, you know, with being, solid in yourself, and then you, like I said, then you become a solid husband, and you become a solid father, and you build up the next generation to be solid in themselves. You build up a generation of bosses, and, you know, by black also.
So both of you talked about being strong black men. I was listening to this psychiatrist, Dr. Welsing, and she's an older woman, and she spent all of her professional years studying racism and everything that is attached to that. And she talked about the need for strong black men. And she said something very, very interesting. She said that we throw around this term when we want to say something negative to someone about their ability, their brain. We call them a bird brain. You know, we want to call someone stupid, right? You may call them a bird brain. So she says, you may call someone a bird brain, but even a bird knows that you build a nest before you lay the egg. And what's happening in our community is that many eggs are being laid, the sperm is going out there, and no nest. And so how do you create, and how are you going to have strong black men that are being born with literally no nest, like no foundation whatsoever, no place to even barely lay their heads? And so we're bringing black men into society already in survival mode. And so right there, before the egg meets the sperm, the black man is already doomed.
Right.
And so this is part of the education that needs to happen. My heart goes out every time I see, young girls who are, how can a 15-year-old pour strength when she's just trying to figure out how to still grow up? How can she pour any strength into her son and raise him for the next 25 years to be
With no man.
a strong black man with no man?
It's actually an impossibility
Impossible.
for him to get everything that he needs out of that
Impossible.
situation.
Impossible. And so, as we come to a close, thank you so much, my children. You guys are amazing. I appreciate you sharing on tonight. And I want to close as we usually do with our sit, think, and reflect. And so as we sit, think, and reflect about what was shared on tonight, I thought about he wasn't a psychiatrist, I believe he was an author, an activist. His name was Nellie Fuller, Dr. Fuller. He talked about how the victim of a system can respond in 4 ways. And this is what I want us to think about tonight. The victim of a system can respond in 4 ways. We can either submit, meaning we can just lay down and accept whatever society throws at us. We just lay down and accept it. We can cooperate, which is where many black people are. Just let me have my job and let me be able to take care of my family, and I'll do whatever I need to do to continue to make it day by day. So we can either submit, we can cooperate, or we can get to the place where we resist. I think over this summer, of course, because of all that we have experienced, it has begun to heighten the resistance. But we've been in these spaces before. And so as soon as things die down a little bit, we go back to cooperating. And so the question that I pose to you tonight is, will you at least be in that space of resistance where you are willing to talk about systemic racism, you're willing to provide the education, willing to get your own education, and know enough to know when something in your white space is, or someone is being racist. Sometimes we hear it so much and it happens so often that we're not even aware, or if we are aware, we're too fearful to bring it up, fearful that we're going to be experiencing gaslighting. No, it's not like that. It's not that serious. Oh, why you, or the angry black woman, all of those, or black man, all of those things that we fear that we will encounter. So are we willing to resist? And then, is anyone willing to go to the fourth level, and that is to engage in destruction? And so, engaging in destruction, where you're Martin Luther King's, willing to die for the cause. You're Malcolm X, willing to die for the cause. So those are the four levels. Will we just submit? Will we cooperate? Will we get to the place where we at least will resist and have that be who we are? I'm going to live in a place of resistance, and nobody is going to just do whatever they want to do just because they can, without me saying something, without me calling it to their attention. And so that's what I want you to have your sit, think, and reflect moment. Like, where am I? Where have I been? Where am I willing to go? And so with that, thank you again. If you haven't done so, my website is up. You can go to Dr. Danita Thompson, www.dr, not the entire word spelled out, drdanita.thompson.com. Check it out, subscribe, and just continue to join us weekly. We have much more to share as the weeks progress. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend.